The previous video, for those of you who missed it, will give you the background information that you need to really understand what this text is about. So for this video, we're going to be looking at the last diary entry of John Wilkes Booth. For those of you who don't know or don't remember, John Wilkes Booth was the man who assassinated President Lincoln. This diary entry was written after that assassination, which is kind of important. Until today, nothing was ever thought of sacrificing to our country's wrongs. For 6 months we had worked capture, but our cause being almost lost, something decisive and great must be done. But its failure was owing to others, who did not strike for their country with a heart. I struck boldly, and not as the papers say. I walked with a firm step through 1,000 of his friends, and was stopped, but pushed on. A colonel was at his side. I shouted "Sic Semper" before I fired. And jumping, broke my leg. I passed all his pickets, rode 60 miles that night with the bone in my leg tearing the flesh at every jump. I can never repent it, though we hated to kill. Our country owed all her troubles to him, and God simply made me the instrument of his punishment. The country is not what it was. This forced union is not what I have loved. I care not what becomes of me. I have no desire to outlive my country. The night before the deed I wrote a long article and left it for one of the editors of the National Intelligencer, in which I fully set forth our reasons for our proceedings, he or the government. After being hunted like a dog through swamps, woods, and last night being chased by gunboats till I was forced to return wet, cold, and starving, with every man's hand against me, I am here in despair. And why? For doing what Brutus was honored for, what made Tell a hero. And yet I, for striking down a greater tyrant than they ever knew, am looked upon as a common cutthroat. My action was purer than either of theirs. One hoped to be great himself. The other had not his country's but his own wrongs to avenge. I hoped for no gain. I knew no private wrong. I struck for my country, and that alone. A country that groaned beneath this tyranny, and prayed for this end. And yet now, behold the cold hands they extend to me. God cannot pardon me if I have done wrong. Yet I cannot see my wrong, except in serving a degenerate people. The very little I left behind to clear my name, the government will not allow to be printed. So ends all. For my country I have given up all that makes life sweet and holy, brought misery upon my family, and am sure there is no pardon in the heaven for me, since man condemns me so. I have only heard of what has been done, except what I did myself, and it fills me with horror. God, try and forgive me, and bless my mother. Tonight I will once more try the river with the intent to cross. Though I have a greater desire and almost a mind to return to Washington and in a measure clear my name, which I feel I can do, I do not repent the blow I struck. I may before my God, but not to man. I think I have done well, though I am abandoned, with the curse of Cain upon me, when, if the world knew my heart, that one blow would have made me great, though I did desire no greatness. Tonight I try to escape these bloodhounds once more. Who can read his fate? God's will be done. I have too great a soul to die like a criminal. Oh, may he spare me that, and let me die bravely. I bless the entire world. Have never hated or wronged anyone. This last was not a wrong, unless God deems it so, and it's with him to damn or bless me. As for this brave boy with me, who often prays, yes, before and since, with a true and sincere heart, was it crime in him? If so, why can he pray the same? I do not wish to shed a drop of blood, but I must fight the course. 'Tis all that's left to me. Alright, so there are a couple things that we need to talk about here. So this first paragraph is kind of him making an argument that what he did in assassinating President Lincoln was necessary and right. He felt that President Lincoln was a tyrant, and he argued that he was removing a tyrant for the good of the people, right? Before he did it, and he didn't sneak in to assassinate him. In his mind, he walked in, he says, with a bold step through thousands of his friends. He goes in proudly, boldly. He doesn't hide what he's trying to do. and he shouts Sic Semper before he fires the shot. Sic Semper means always faithful. He's making an argument that what he's doing is for the good of the country that he loves. He's doing it because he feels like the only way to save the government, to save the United States, is to remove President Lincoln. Then, in the second paragraph, he starts to feel the consequence of that action. Takes out Lincoln, he assassinates him, and then he's hunted. Quote, like a dog through swamps, woods, and last night being chased by gunboats until I was forced to return wet, cold, and starving. So he's, at this point, killed President Lincoln, and he's unable to return to society. He's unable to kind of enjoy, if you will, the result of what he's done because people were trying to hunt him down. And he compares himself to Brutus and Tell. Brutus being the man who kind of organized the murder, the assassination of Julius Caesar, and William Tell, who was a folk hero in Switzerland, who supposedly assassinated one of the leading men in Switzerland at the time, who was kind of tyrannical, who ruled for himself instead of for the good of his people. And he says that he had better motives than them. He wasn't trying to do it for himself or to avenge anything personal. He was doing it for the good of his people as opposed to what they were doing, which was really just for themselves. But where they were commended for it, where they were remembered as being good people, he feels like he's not going to be, even though he feels like our country was suffering under the hand of Abraham Lincoln. But then, more importantly, we start to get to, sorry, it's on the next slide. We get to the part where he talks about the curse of Cain being on him. He feels like he is unable to return to society. He's being hunted down like a criminal, which he doesn't feel like he is. And he feels like he's never going to be able to go back and say that what he did was wrong. He feels like he did the right thing, and as such, he's going to have to live for as long as he can outside of the society that he sacrificed everything, in his opinion. He's brought shame upon his family. He sacrificed his life, essentially, because he's unable to return to it for the good of a country that holds him as a criminal. So he really feels like he has been set apart from society, even though he did the right thing, because they can't look at the goal, which was saving the country in his mind, past the method that he used to do it. All right, so first question, central idea of the text. What is this about? What main purposes did the author have in writing this? Remember that this was John Wilkes Booth's personal diary. So what is he trying to do here? He's making an argument about something. He's trying to prove a point. And then how does the relationship between Booth and God develop throughout the text? Booth periodically refers to God throughout this pretty short diary entry. And how he feels like God is going to respond to his actions. So how does he do that? And how does it develop? Because it changes. At first he feels that God is going to respond in one way, or that he did it in a certain way, and then he feels like maybe he's wrong. He starts to kind of question it. And then This is kind of emphasized with the repetition of the word repent. Repent means to ask for forgiveness. So what effect does the repetition of repent, I can never repent, and I do not repent, have on the development of Booth's argument? So like I said in the first question, he's making an argument. He's trying to prove a point about his action being justified, essentially. So how does him saying, I can't repent, I can't ask for forgiveness, and I'm not going to, I don't ask for forgiveness, how does that emphasize that? He's saying, at first he says he won't ask for forgiveness from man, but maybe from God, and then by the end of it he says, you know what, I don't even feel like I can ask for forgiveness from God. So what does that show for his argument? What does that prove to you, or what is he trying to prove to you, the reader, by saying, I can't repent? It's not an option here. Figure something else out, because that one's not going to work. So I'm going to leave you with that for right this second. Keep in mind that, again, this is an argument. He's trying to convince the reader, even though he says he doesn't feel like anybody's ever going to read this. So if he's not trying to really convince the reader, who do you think he's trying to convince? But he's trying to convince his reader of something, of him being justified in what he's done. So look into what he's trying to prove is justified and why. And then look into why he feels like he can't ask for forgiveness for it. Those are kind of the two important pieces to this. And then we'll put those two texts together and do a little bit of comparison in the next video.